My name is Iris Vale, 35 years old. The week had felt endless, a blur of drills, patient charts, and fluorescent lights. For 2 months, I'd been standing in for my boss at the dental clinic while he dealt with his imploding marriage, which meant that on top of my patients, I handled inventory, staff schedules, and supplier contracts. It wasn't the work itself that wore me down. It was the silence that followed every night when I locked the door and realized I'd given every drop of energy to everyone except myself. That Friday, I told myself I was going to breathe again. The lake house would fix it. My house, 40 minutes outside the city, surrounded by pines and rippling water, the one piece of peace I'd ever bought with my own hands. I loaded the trunk with groceries, pasta, wine, chocolate, shampoo, a new bottle of mint body wash, and started the drive at sunset. The city fell away behind me, its glass and concrete dissolving into gold-tipped trees. The air cooled with each mile, the kind of air that promised quiet. The radio murmured low jazz, the road curving like ribbon around the lake. By the time I turned onto the gravel path, my shoulders had begun to unclench. I imagined myself reading on the porch, toes bare, the smell of pine sap thick in the air. Then I saw the lights. Every lamp in the house was on. Music pulsed through the closed windows, some pop song blasting so loudly the glass trembled. 3 cars sat crooked in the gravel lot. One was my brother Jake's silver sedan, and 2 others I didn't recognize. For a moment, I wondered if something was wrong, if someone had broken in. But as I stepped out of the car, laughter spilled through the door. Loud, careless laughter. I knocked once. Nothing. I knocked again, harder. Still nothing. My pulse started to rise. I unlocked the door with my key and pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Alcohol, cheap perfume, and the faint musk of lake water from wet shoes. My living room looked like a stranger's house. Beer bottles lined the coffee table, my sofa covered with coats. Strangers filled the room, maybe 10 people in total, all mid-conversation, frozen the moment they noticed me. And there she was, Cassandra. Cassandra stood near the kitchen island, drink in hand, eyes glassy and red. She wore one of those glittering tops that looked expensive until you saw the frayed threads. Her parents sat comfortably on my couch, her cousins sprawled across the rug, a Bluetooth speaker blaring from the shelf where my books used to be. When the door closed behind me, someone finally turned down the music. The room fell quiet. Cassandra's lip curled. "What are you doing here?" I blinked at her. "This is my house." She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "We have a key. Jake said it's fine. We come here all the time." I looked at her parents, expecting embarrassment. Nothing. Just mild irritation, as if I'd interrupted their evening plans. My brother wasn't even there. "I came here to relax," I said evenly. "So you all need to finish your party tonight and leave." Cassandra's eyes narrowed. "Are you serious? We just got here." She turned to her relatives. "Can you believe this? The stupid Leech wants to kick us out of our own weekend." A few people chuckled uncomfortably. Something inside me froze solid. I looked around my own living room, the family photos, the knit throw my mother gave me, the soft lamplight, and felt like an intruder. "I'm the one who paid for the wedding," I said softly. "The rent, the car you're driving right now. But sure, Cassandra, I'm the Leech." She stepped closer, her breath thick with wine. "Then do us a favor. Get out before we make you." The room tilted slightly, the silence tightening around her words. My heartbeat thudded in my throat. And then, inexplicably, I smiled. "Okay," I said, "I'll leave." A few laughs followed me out the door. "Bye, old maid," someone called. "Don't trip on your way out." The cold air outside was cleaner than any apology they could have offered. I got in my car, my hands shaking, but my smile still frozen in place. By the time I hit the main road, anger burned hot behind my ribs. Each mile of asphalt seemed to whisper the same thing. "Nuff." Back at my apartment, I carried the groceries inside mechanically, set the wine bottle on the counter, and stood there staring at it. The city lights through my window flickered like restless stars. I boiled water for tea, mint, the kind that usually soothed me, but it did nothing this time. Cassandra's words replayed in my head. Stupid Leech. I thought about the $18,000 I'd written for their wedding, about the 12 months of rent transfers that were supposed to last just 2 or 3, about the car loan payments I'd quietly covered every month. I thought about Jake's voice on the phone, "Just until I get back on my feet, sis," and the way I always said yes. The tea went cold in my hand before I took a sip. I set it down and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the trackpad as a quiet, sharp certainty settled inside me. Tomorrow I would end it. No confrontation, no explanations, just a clean break. The next morning I woke early, sunlight cutting through the blinds. I dressed neatly, brushed my hair, and drove to the bank. The teller recognized me, Patricia, mid-40s, sharp suit, kind eyes. Morning, Dr. Vale. What can I do for you today? I need to update some accounts, I said. Remove an authorized user. She typed quickly. Which account? My emergency savings. Name of the user to remove? Jake Vale. Her eyes flicked up briefly, reading something in my face, then nodded. Understood. It took less than 5 minutes. When she handed me the confirmation slip, I felt something uncoil in my chest, a strange lightness. As I left, Patricia said quietly, "Boundaries are hard the first time. After that, they save you." Outside, the autumn wind caught my hair and tossed it across my face. For the first time in years, I didn't rush to fix it. That night, my phone rang. Jake. Iris, what the hell? The landlord says the rent didn't go through. Because I canceled it, I said. Silence. And your car loan. And your access to my savings. More silence. Then his voice exploded through the line. Are you crazy? We count on that. You can't just... Your wife called me a leech in my own house, I said quietly. So yes, I can. He hung up. 30 seconds later, Cassandra's name lit up my screen. I let it ring out. Twice. Then the text started. Long strings of insults, accusations, moral lectures about family loyalty. I read every one. Then, for the first time, I laughed. A real, full laugh that echoed in my empty kitchen. By the time the sun went down, I knew what I'd do next weekend. I'd drive back to the lake house. I'd hire a locksmith. I'd take my piece back, key by key. And this time, no one would take it from me again. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, the kind of alertness that doesn't feel like rest so much as resolve. I showered, braided my hair, and chose the navy blazer I wear when I need my spine to remember it's a column. Outside, the air had that brittle, early autumn bite, the sky a clean blue, scrubbed of clouds. I didn't make coffee. I didn't need it. I drove to the bank with both hands steady on the wheel and my jaw unclenched for the first time in months. Inside, the branch was half empty. Soft music, a printer churring somewhere, the quiet choreography of people filling forms. Patricia looked up from her station as if she'd been waiting for me. She has one of those faces that sees the person before the account. Good morning, Dr. Vale, she said. What can I help you with? I need to remove an authorized user from an account, cancel 2 recurring payments, and update my contact preferences. She nodded and gestured to a small desk off to the side. Let's do it together so nothing gets missed. Her keyboard made a neat little rhythm as she pulled up my profile. Which account first? My emergency savings, I said. Saying it out loud made the room feel taller. Remove the user Jake Vale. She didn't lift her eyebrows or ask why. She just clicked through the confirmation steps and turned the screen slightly so I could read the form. Please verify. Once I submit, the change is immediate. I read it twice and signed. There was a click, a small digital sound, like a seatbelt locking. Something inside me answered it. Next, I said, cancel the automatic rent transfer to Harper Properties, $1,400 on the 1st, and cancel the car loan auto pay to Gregory Motors, $320 on the 15th. She typed, paused. Done, she said quietly. Then, after a breath, if you'd like, we can add a note on the accounts for any incoming attempts. It will trigger a review instead of a pass-through. Please. I watched her set the flags, a private storm shutter sliding into place. She printed 3 slim slips of paper and handed them to me in a tidy stack. As I gathered them, she met my eyes. Boundaries are hard the first time. After that, they save you. Her kindness landed like a bridge I could step onto. Thank you, I said, for making this feel simple. It isn't simple, she said. You just decided. That's different. Outside, the parking lot smelled like new asphalt and damp leaves. I sat in my car for a minute, holding the receipts as if they were a passport out of a country I should not have been living in. The phone on my passenger seat buzzed with a silent call. I watched it light and go dark. I didn't look at the name. Back home, I made coffee and opened my laptop. I logged into every portal that still tethered me to Jake's household, the landlord's site, the auto lender, the little family calendar we used to share for birthdays and holidays. I removed my card where it still lurked. I turned off the calendar notifications. I archived years of emails that began with, Sis, Quick favor. It felt like emptying a closet and finding the floor again. Around noon, the first call I couldn't ignore came through. Mom. Ruby, she started, catching herself. Iris, are you busy? It wasn't lost on me that she used to call me Ruby by mistake because Cassandra loved to sneer that I had a spinster name from a thrift store. I wiped the counter with a dish towel and said, I can talk. Jake is upset, she said in that fragile, wounded tone that made me 13 again. The landlord said your payment didn't process. He's embarrassed. You know how much stress he's under. Mom, I said, keeping my voice even. I canceled it. A small gasp. But why would you do that without telling him? Because I told him with my actions for 2 years. I paid. I helped. I didn't make speeches about it. And last night his wife told me to get out of my own house. There was a long pause. I could hear the television murmuring in my parents' living room and the clink of a spoon in a mug. Cassandra can be moody, Mom said, stretching the word like a rubber band. But Iris, we avoid conflicts in this family. It's how we keep the peace. Is it peace, I asked softly, if it requires me to be humiliated and pay for the privilege? Her breath caught. You don't mean it like that. I mean it exactly like that. She tried again, gentler. Your brother loves his wife. She has strong opinions. You've always been the responsible one. Can't you give in a little, just until he gets back on his feet? I looked at the cooling coffee, the neat little foam that had settled into a pale ring. I have given, Mom, past and present tense. I didn't add future. I didn't need to. We both heard it sitting there. She sighed, tired. I don't want a rift. Then stop calling the rift a request for respect. I softened my tone. I love you, but I'm done funding disrespect. That is my line. I'll tell your father you said hello, she murmured, the way she always ended calls when she didn't like the ending. We said goodbye and she hung up first. An hour later, Jake called. He didn't say hello. What happened? The rent, the car, the account? What did you do? I turned off the taps, I said, all of them. You can't just... I can. I did. You gave Cassandra a key to my house, and she used it to invite an army. She called me a leech in my living room. Fix that first. You know how she is when she drinks, he said quickly, as if he'd rehearsed it. It was a joke. Then your joke has consequences. I let the words sit. You're my brother. That doesn't entitle you to my bank account. Family helps family. Respect is the only currency I accept now. He swore and hung up. 30 seconds later, Cassandra. I didn't pick up. The voicemail that followed started polite. Iris, be reasonable. And sprinted into venom before the minute was up. You jealous, bitter woman. You'll die alone. You owe us after all we've done for you. I saved it. The texts poured in like a sewer backflow. Screenshots of them calling me names. A photo of my own living room with her relatives toasting, a caption. Thanks for the free hotel, dentist. I archived those too. A ledger of rot. By sunset, I had made the appointment with the locksmith. Saturday, 10 a.m., I said. Change every lock. Front, back, the shed, the boathouse. Rekey, new deadbolt. Any reason? The man asked in a friendly way. Because I forgot who I gave spare keys to, I said, and surprised us both with a laugh. I slept well for the first time in weeks. In the morning, the sky was pearl gray and the lake road smelled like wet pine. The locksmith's van was already in my gravel drive when I arrived, a thermos steaming on his dashboard. He was cheerful and quick, his tool belt jingling a little music as he moved. He didn't talk much, which I appreciated. He swapped out the faceplates and cylinders, set the deadbolt deeper, and tested every turn twice. When he handed me 3 fresh keys on a ring, they were warm from his hand. There, he said, clean slate. I tipped him and watched him drive away, then walk through the house alone. It felt shy around me, as if I were a stranger returning after a long absence. I opened windows. Pine washed in, cool and sharp. I picked up the scattered bottle caps and dropped them into a trash bag. I found one of Cassandra's sequined earrings under the edge of the rug and put it in the kitchen drawer labeled MISC, not as a keepsake, but as a reminder. A small glint of a boundary crossed and corrected. I took the speaker off the shelf, turned it over in my hands. It had smudges of glitter on it, a sticky film of spilled something. I carried it to the donation box in the shed. Someone else could blast their party, not here. Before I left, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee. The lake was matte silver, quiet, but pulsing with small life. Gnats, a fish ripple, the distant call of a bird whose name I didn't know. My phone lay face up on the railing, dark. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for it to tell me who I needed to be. That evening, back in the city, I put the new keys in a small ceramic bowl by my door. The sound they made was delicate and declarative, not unlike a gavel. I watered my one stubborn houseplant and stood there listening to the apartment hum. When the knock came, I knew who it was before I looked. Through the peephole, my mother's cardigan in that faded rose color, my father's shoulders set tight under his jacket, and between them, Jake, hands jammed into his pockets, eyes flat. Cassandra wasn't with them. Of course she wasn't. This was meant to be a reasonable conversation. I opened the door. "Come in," I said, and stepped aside. We walked to the kitchen table. 4 chairs. Nobody sat first. The silence was a fifth person, patient and watchful. I placed the key ring on the table gently, a small constellation of brass in the center. "All right," I said. "Say what you came to say." Jake swallowed, glanced at our parents, and lifted his chin like a man about to deliver lines he barely believed. "Cassandra will apologize," he said, "but only if you restore everything. The rent, the car, the account, all of it." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. When it didn't come, laughter slipped out before I could stop it. A quiet, incredulous laugh that filled the tense kitchen like smoke. "An apology," I said slowly, "in exchange for $50,000 and my dignity? That's an expensive sorry, Jake." He flinched, glancing at Mom for backup. She looked away, smoothing a non-existent wrinkle on the tablecloth. Dad just sat there, hands clasped, jaw tight. Jake's voice hardened. "You don't understand, Iris. We're in a bad spot right now. Cassandra feels terrible about what she said. She was drunk." "Stop," I interrupted softly. "You were there that night?" His mouth opened, then closed. "No," he admitted. "Then don't tell me how she felt." I reached for my phone on the counter and swiped through the thread of messages Cassandra had sent me over the last few days. "Here," I said, turning the screen toward him. "Maybe read her apology out loud." He hesitated. Mom leaned forward first, then Dad. Line by line, their expressions changed as they read. "Pathetic old maid. Ugly, jealous witch. No man will ever want you. You should thank me for letting you near my family." By the time they finished, the room felt like it was vibrating with silence. "That," I said, "is your wife's idea of an apology." Mom's voice trembled. I didn't know she said those things." "You didn't ask," I said simply. "You just assumed I was the problem because it's easier to blame the quiet one." Jake's fists clenched. "She's not usually like that. She's just been under pressure." "Then maybe she should scream into a pillow, not into my life." He stood abruptly. "You're really going to let us drown? After everything we've done for you?" I looked at him, as the brother I used to babysit and defend from bullies. "Tell me one thing you've done for me lately that didn't come with an invoice attached." No one answered. Finally, Dad spoke, voice low and weary. "Enough. Iris has made her decision." Jake turned on him, shocked. "Dad!" But Dad just shook his head. "Your sister's not wrong." Mom tried one last time. "Iris, please. We can't have this kind of bitterness between you two. Family is family." "Family," I said, "is respect. Without that, it's just people who share a last name." Jake stormed out first, muttering curses under his breath. Mom followed, tearful, still pleading. Dad lingered a second longer, gave me a small, sad nod, then left too. When the door shut, the apartment exhaled. I sat for a long time, staring at the keyring still lying in the middle of the table. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow, but also lighter. That night, I poured a glass of wine, curled up on the couch, and watched the city lights blink through the window. I thought about how much I'd given them, how many yeses had drained me dry, how many times I'd mistaken guilt for love. The next week was quiet, eerily quiet. No calls from Jake, no messages from Mom, just the normal rhythm of my workdays and the hum of my own breathing at night. Then, one Friday afternoon, my phone rang again, Mom's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. "Iris," she said, voice strained, "I thought you should know. The landlord evicted Jake and Cassandra. They're moving in with us." I closed my eyes, pressed my thumb against my temple. "Okay." "That's all you have to say?" "You chose to help them, Mom. I won't stop you, but don't ask me to fund it." "I wasn't going to," she said quickly, but her tone wavered. "Just thought you should know." I hung up gently. 2 months passed. Work was good. The clinic ran smoothly. My savings account grew, and for the first time in years, Every dollar I earned stayed where I put it. Then, one evening, Mom called again. This time she sounded exhausted. Iris, she sighed. I can't do this anymore. I set down my fork. Do what? It's Cassandra. She's impossible. I didn't say anything. She complains about everything, Mom continued. The food, the cleaning, the noise. She makes your father move furniture even though his back still hurts. Yesterday she made him drag the sofa across the room twice because she didn't like how it looked. And she criticizes me every day. The temperature's wrong. The laundry smells like soap. The dishes aren't stacked right. My jaw tightened. And Jake? He defends her, Mom whispered. Every single time. I'm sorry, Mom, I said quietly, but I warned you. I know, she murmured. I just thought she might change. She won't, I said. Not until life forces her to. There was silence on the other end, the kind that stretches miles. I can't keep doing this, Mom said again, her voice trembling. She's destroying our peace. Then set boundaries, I said, or she'll never stop. I'm not as strong as you, she admitted. Then you'll stay tired. When we hung up, I sat in the dark, letting the quiet wrap around me. For the first time, I didn't feel cruel for saying no. I felt clean. A few weeks later, Dad called. It was the first time he'd called me directly in months. Iris, he said gruffly, you were right about all of it. My heart sank a little. What happened? Jake and Cassandra had a fight, a bad one. She's been posting things online, calling him names, saying he can't provide, humiliating him. Your mother's beside herself. What's Jake doing? He's embarrassed, Dad said, but I think something broke in him this time. He was right. 2 days later, Jake filed for divorce. Mom told me over coffee the following week, her hands shaking around the mug. She called him worthless, said she deserved better. She told the whole world their problems. I don't know how he didn't see this coming. I stirred my drink slowly. He saw it. He just didn't want to admit it. For once, Mom didn't defend Cassandra. She just nodded, eyes red. Jake's moving back in with us until he finds his own place, she added softly. He's quiet, different. Maybe now, I said, he'll understand the cost of peace. That weekend, I drove to the lake house again. The leaves had turned orange around the waterline, the air sharp with pine and smoke. I unlocked the new door, stepped inside, and exhaled. No voices, no music, no one else's perfume lingering in the air, just wood, lake, and silence. I brewed tea, stood by the window, and watched the sun bleed into the water. For the first time in a long while, I didn't think about what I'd lost. I thought about what I'd reclaimed. The divorce happened faster than anyone expected. Jake didn't fight her for property, furniture, or even the car that I'd been paying for. He just wanted out. Mom called me 2 weeks after it became official. Her voice carried a strange mix of relief and grief. It's done, she said. She signed the papers. She moved out yesterday morning. I set my mug down carefully. How's Jake holding up? He's quiet, tired, but he's working again. He found a new sales position, better pay, better hours. He's trying to rebuild. That's good, I said. He needs to. Mom hesitated, her voice softening. I think losing her broke something in him, but maybe it also fixed something else. I didn't answer right away. There was truth in what she said, but I couldn't quite call it comfort. That night, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker through the mist. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed and faded. The air smelled like rain. I thought about Jake's quiet surrender, how humiliation had finally done what my warnings never could. Some lessons, I realized, only come when the cost becomes unbearable. A month later, Cassandra called me. The number popped up on my screen while I was at the clinic, right between patients. I almost declined it, but curiosity won. Hello? Iris. Her voice was small, almost unrecognizable. Please don't hang up. I closed the office door. You have 1 minute. I know I said awful things to you, she began. I know I don't deserve your help, but I need you to talk to Jake for me. He won't answer my calls. I actually laughed. You want me to help you get back together with my brother, after you called me every name in the book? I made mistakes, she said quickly. But Jake and we were good together once. He just needs to remember that. I leaned against the desk, letting the silence stretch. You treated him like an accessory, Cassandra. You didn't love him. You loved what he gave you. That's not true, she snapped, the sweetness slipping. He was nothing before me. There it is, I said, the real you. Iris, please. No, I said. You told me to get out of my own house. You mocked me, used my money, insulted my family. You get no more favors. Her tone shifted, sharp and bitter. You think you're so much better than me. You're just a lonely woman hiding behind a paycheck. Maybe, I said evenly, but I'd rather be alone than be you. I hung up. A part of me felt a pang of pity. but it passed. Mom called that weekend, her voice full of restrained glee. Guess what? Cassandra's dating someone new. I'm not surprised, I said. His name's Darren, or Derek, something like that. Drinks too much. Her mother told me he's trouble. She's worried sick. Cassandra made her bed, I said quietly. Now she has to lie in it. For months after that, the storm settled. Jake kept to himself, focused on his job. Mom and Dad started to act like their old selves again, hosting small dinners and talking about retirement trips. I went back to my routines, patience, quiet weekends, and my lake house. That house had become my sanctuary. Every time I arrived, I'd open the windows and let the air rush through like the place was exhaling for both of us. I kept it simple. No decorations, no new furniture, just wood and light and stillness. Sometimes when I sat by the water, I thought about how peace used to feel impossible. Now it was just ordinary. 6 months after the divorce, Mom called again. Her voice was brighter this time. You'll never believe it, she said. Jake got promoted. He's managing a team now, makes more money than ever. That's wonderful, I said honestly. He even moved into his own apartment, she continued. A nice one. Big windows. He seems happy. I smiled. He deserves a fresh start. He's been seeing someone too, Mom added. A teacher. Her name's Amy. Sweet girl. That's good for him. Funny thing, she said, lowering her voice. Amy teaches at the same school as one of your colleagues. Michael, right? I laughed. Small world. He's a kind man, Mom said meaningfully. I'm just saying. I could hear the teasing in her tone, the first trace of normal motherly meddling in years. It was oddly comforting. That night, I texted Jake for the first time in months. Heard about your promotion. Proud of you. He replied almost instantly. Thanks, sis. Means a lot. The next time I saw him was at Mom's Sunday dinner. The house smelled like roast chicken and lemon. Dad poured wine. Mom hummed. It felt like we were pretending everything had always been fine. But this time, the pretending didn't feel dishonest. It felt like choosing peace over the ruins. After dinner, Jake lingered while Mom and Dad cleared plates. He leaned against the counter, hands in his pockets. I need to say something, he said. Go on. He looked down, then back at me. I'm sorry. The words came out rough, real. For letting Cassandra treat you the way she did. For taking your money. For not standing up for you when I should have. You were right about everything. For a second, my throat tightened. I'd waited years to hear that, so long that I almost forgot I wanted it. I forgive you, I said quietly, but promise me something. Anything. Don't let guilt turn into debt. Just live better. He nodded. I will. We hugged, awkward at first, then real. It felt like a closing chapter, not of anger, but of survival. Weeks later, I heard from Mom that Cassandra's new relationship had already imploded. Darren, or Derek, had been arrested for drunk driving. Cassandra had shown up at her parents' doorstep crying. Her once flawless social media was now private, her smile replaced by silence. I didn't feel joy, I didn't feel revenge, I just felt done. Some stories don't end with fireworks. Some end with the quiet click of a door finally closing. That night, I drove to the lake house again. The water shimmered under a half moon. I stood on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders, sipping tea, watching ripples fan out across the surface. This was mine again, every quiet breath of it. I thought of all the years I mistook enabling for kindness, silence for loyalty. But peace, I realized, doesn't come from pleasing others. It comes from finally pleasing yourself. And in that moment, under the silver light of the lake, I whispered to the water, never again. Spring arrived almost without warning. One morning, I woke to birdsong outside my apartment window instead of the hiss of wind through bare trees, and I realized winter had slipped quietly away. The world had begun again, and so had we. Jake came by that weekend, carrying a box of pastries from the little bakery on 6th. Peace offering, he said with a sheepish grin. The box was warm, the air fragrant with butter and sugar. Apology accepted, I said, though there wasn't much left to forgive. He laughed, and for the first time in years, it sounded like the brother I grew up with. We sat in my kitchen, coffee steaming between us. He told me about his new job, how his boss respected him, how he'd learned to budget. I even started saving, he said, eyes bright. Feels weird not living paycheck to paycheck. Feels like freedom, I said. He nodded. Yeah, that's exactly it. Then he smiled in a way that almost made me choke on my coffee. There's something else. I'm dating someone. Let me guess, Amy, the teacher? His grin widened. Yeah, how'd you know? Mom told me. She tells me everything now. She's incredible, he said. Grounded, kind, funny, the opposite of, well, I raised an eyebrow. Opposite of Cassandra? He winced but didn't deny it. Yeah, we talked for hours, not about money or guilt, but about movies, travel, food, the small human things families forget when they're too busy surviving each other. When he left, he hugged me twice, once for the past, once for the present. A week later, Mom and Dad invited me over for dinner. It had been a long time since I'd said yes. The smell of roasted herbs hit me as soon as I walked in. The table was set neatly, no tension hanging in the air. Mom's face softened when she saw me. "It's good to have you home." "I wasn't sure it still was," I said honestly. She squeezed my hand. "It always was. We just forgot how to show it." We ate, we laughed, and when the meal ended, Dad poured a small glass of wine for each of us. "To lessons learned the hard way," he said, raising his glass. "To boundaries," I added. Mom nodded, "and to peace that stays." For once, the toast didn't feel like an act. That weekend, I returned to the lake house. The water shimmered under morning light, the air filled with pine and thawing earth. Every corner of the cabin still carried quiet traces of what had happened. The faint scratch where Cassandra's heel had scuffed the floor, the pale ghost of a ring from a glass that had been left too long on the table. But now, those marks felt like proof of endurance, not wounds. I opened all the windows and let the wind sweep through. The curtains billowed like sails, catching sunlight. On the mantel, I placed a small framed note I'd written on a scrap of paper. "Respect or nothing." It wasn't anger, it was a promise. Later, I sat on the porch, the lake glimmering like polished glass. I thought about everything that had happened. The insults, the withdrawals, the guilt, the silence, the slow rebuild. All of it had led here. For the first time, peace didn't feel like something fragile I had to guard. It felt earned, solid, built from the inside out. My phone buzzed on the railing. A text from Jake. "Amy wants to meet you. Dinner next week?" "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. A few minutes later, another message came in, from an unfamiliar number. "Hi, Iris, it's Michael. I work with Amy. She mentioned you might like coffee sometime." I smiled. The universe had a sense of timing, it seemed. I typed back, "I'd like that." As the sun sank, I walked down to the dock, toes brushing the cool surface of the water. I thought of how much of my life had been spent fixing things that weren't mine to fix. People, relationships, expectations. Now all that energy was finally free to build something new. The horizon glowed pink and gold, the light shimmering across the lake like molten glass. I breathed it in deeply, the way you breathe when you finally have space to do so. Generosity is a gift, but I'd learned something vital. Generosity without respect is exploitation, and forgiveness without change is surrender. Jake had changed. Mom and Dad had learned. Even I had softened in ways I didn't expect. But Cassandra, she was just another echo fading into the distance, a warning bell I'd already heeded. Mom said she'd seen her once at the grocery store, hair unkempt, eyes hollow, muttering to herself in the checkout line. I didn't say anything, Mom told me later, just prayed she finds peace someday. So did I, but far away from us. As dusk fell, the first stars appeared over the water. I locked the door, the new key cold and familiar in my palm. The lock clicked with that same clean finality it had the first time, the sound of ownership, of return. Driving back to the city, I passed the same winding roads I'd taken that night months ago, the night I found my house full of strangers. Back then, anger had been my companion. Tonight, it was gratitude. Gratitude for endings that made room for beginnings. Gratitude for silence that no longer hurt. Gratitude for the strength it takes to say no. At the last turn before the highway, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The lake glowed faintly behind me, moonlight trembling across its surface like forgiveness itself. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to look back again.